paranoid delusions. The wind buffeted him wildly, and the rain hammered down relentlessly. He was walking near the local creek, which was connected to the suburb's storm water drains. But this particular area was just rocks, shrubs, trees, and water. Hastily, he made his way down to the muddy stream, which, at this time, was pitch black, and stepped into the water. This would be a sort of baptism. He descended into the water and dunked himself in it. It was too shallow to cover his entire body, so he splashed some water onto his head. Now he was ready for whatever this night held in store for him. As he ascended the side of the creek, he saw before him the well-trimmed grass soccer field, lit by down lights on the large steel poles surrounding it, and began to stagger in its direction. Soon, he was standing in the middle of the field, wet from the downpour. He felt alone. Not physically alone. There were cars going up and down the road next to the field, but as far as he knew, nobody knew he was out here. But strangely, he saw someone approaching in the light. It was a middle-aged man. Thunder boomed across the field. "What are you doing out here?" "Best to be truthful. I'm waiting for the world to end." "Have you come to join me?" Lightning lit up the sky. "Yes, I'm out here for the same reason." They both turned and looked at the houses, whose steel back fences met the side of the field. "Do you think we're the only ones who know?" The rain belted down on them both. "I think so." The thunder from the lightning rumbled heavy and hard, as more great arcs lit up the sky, and the rain became heavier. The man looked at him through the gelatinous downpour. "How did you get here?" he replied in a frantic rush. "I've been walking through this night down many different paths. I honestly couldn't tell you how I got here. I just kept on walking. Eventually, I hit the creek over there, and then I came to this field." The wind battered them, causing the rain to hit them in an angular fashion, directly on their face. The man came up to him, soaking wet, and put a hand on his shoulder. "Tell me your name. We need to pass the time somehow." The rain began to subside, and the wind became calmer. He responded, "My name's Jack. Who are you anyway?" The man looked at the ground, his hand still on his shoulder. "I'm David. Tell me everything you know about why you're here. Tell me everything you know about the world ending." He sat down, and the man sat with him. "I left my car when the radio started sounding funny. Just got out and left it where it was. It wasn't just the radio. I felt like the car was going to lock me in any second. I walked and walked, and when I got to some shops, I heard people laughing at me, but I just ignored them and opened the Bible. I was sitting on a concrete barrier, and the pages just started to turn, slowly at first, but then faster and faster, till it stopped at the book of Revelation. Ah, the book of Revelation, the prophecy of the end times. But don't you think that maybe it was just the wind? Jack's face tightened and his teeth gritted. It was a sign. I know a sign when I see one. A loud thunder crack shook the earth. He began to pace back and forth, and then turned to face David, his voice trembling despite his efforts, words spilling out too fast, fingers twitching against the damp grass. The end of the world is when God returns his Son, Jesus, back to the world to judge everyone. Everything great we have built, all the technology we have created, it won't make any difference. Everything will be destroyed to be remade again. All the wicked will be sent to hell, while those who believe will be given new bodies and will live forever with God, Jesus, in their midst. I see, said David. I'm not going to debate your beliefs with you. I respect your choice. But tell me, what made you think it's happening right now? He began to pace again. It started as a feeling. I was feeling so amped up. And then I saw the pages turn on my Bible. And then this crazy storm started happening. And I've had this horrible feeling, like 1,000 people are watching me at once. If I close my eyes, I can almost see them looking at me. And then, when I was in my car, I heard people singing my name. I don't know why they were doing that. Maybe they want me to think I'm special. So I'll think I am the Messiah, but I'd be a false Messiah, so I can't let them control me, David replied softly. I can see there is a lot going on for you. Let's break this down. So, the storm made you feel more alert, more vigilant. The way you said it before, it was as if your feelings created the storm. But don't you think the storm might have been what, in your words, amped you up, and not the other way around? The wind became gentle. He continued, his voice calm and reassuring. And the feeling of being watched. This could be paranoia. Many people who become paranoid feel they are being watched. And when you heard people singing your name, are you sure that's what you heard? Do you think maybe you misheard? Or perhaps you're hallucinating? In any case, you left your car running in the middle of the road. I hope it hasn't been stolen. His shoulders slumped. The clouds were clearing, and a few stars were visible through the soccer field lights. Everything you're saying could be true, but if I can't trust my own feelings, how can I know anything? I'm a Christian. I believe God can talk to me. Is God deceiving me? Silence descended upon them, with only a faint breeze gusting back and forth. David smiled. Listen, I respect your beliefs, and I'm sure that there is something in those beliefs that allows for God to communicate with you in certain ways. But let me tell you something. He opened his wallet and pulled out a card. I am not actually here for the end of the world. I'm here to find you. I'm a psychologist in the public mental health care system. Your parents have reported you missing. And I'm here because your phone allowed us to track you. That might sound like a breach of privacy, but believe me, it's in your own interest. Right now, I believe you are mentally unwell, and I want to help you. Look at the both of us out here, soaked from head to toe. I need you to follow me over to my car so we can take you somewhere where we have medicine that can help calm you down. It's going to be hard at first. The medication isn't perfect, but if you keep taking it, you will get used to the side effects. And then things like this won't happen again. Hopefully. He looked down, wondering at everything he had just heard. How do I know you're telling the truth? How do I know you're going to take me somewhere and torture me? You know the world is filled with people who hate Christians. How do I know you're not a Satanist and part of a plan to make me lose my faith? Tears began to fall from his eyes. I believe that God can get me through anything. But honestly, I don't know if I could hold up under torture. The wind began to pick up again. David's face took on a look of empathy. All I can say is that I promise I'm here to help you. If God is going to communicate with you, it will help if you're thinking straight. And that's what we're going to try to do. Help you to be able to think without succumbing to delusions and paranoia. I've seen many cases like yours, and I really do feel for the people we treat. Will you come with me? He felt a sense of resignation. All right, I'll come with you. Though the ground was soaked, he could feel the firmness of the earth beneath his feet. The two of them walked off the field. The air was now completely still, and crickets could be heard chirping in the night air. Clock is a tickin'. Freeze, jabroni. Don't make a move. Carl almost burst out laughing until he turned around and saw the camouflage gear-festooned, rodent-faced man pointing what could only be a large-caliber handgun directly at him. I told you don't make a move. Now turn around and put your hands behind your back, shrilled the man with the gun. Carl, a tall, thin, balding man with blue eyes, was no longer in a laughing mood. In fact, a sense of ice-cold terror was trickling down his spine. He'd never had a gun pointed at him before. Teetering on the edge of panic, Carl asked the armed man, "Just to be clear, do you want me to freeze and remain still, or turn around and place my arms behind my—" "Shut up, jabroni! Just do what you're told, and nobody gets hurt," barked the gunman. But Carl saw a cloud of confusion pass over the man's rat-like face. Immediately, Carl instinctively knew the man had never pointed a gun at anyone before, and that knowledge placed them on a level playing field, at least to a certain extent. "Hey, look, man, I don't have any problems with you," Carl said as calmly as he could. "I'm just here. Look, my wife got me a new tarp for our trailer for Christmas. and I'm just here to strip off the old tarp and throw the new one on. Who are you, anyway? Carl's trailer was parked next to the Skookumchuck River in a remote rural area of Washington state. Beautiful in the summer, but right now it was December 27th, and freezing rain was dripping from the slate gray sky onto the small collection of aging recreational vehicles parked along the muddy banks of the Skookumchuck. I got no problems with you either, provided you're not a Fed. Now show me some ID. The armed man was still barking orders, but it was clear that the burst of adrenaline was waning, and his voice had lost its threatening edge. Quit pointing that gun at me, and let me get my driver's license, okay? What's your name, anyway? And what are you doing here? Carl said, as he showed the man his Oregon driver's license. You went across state lines, huh? Not a bad idea. Well, shit. I guess we gotta stick together in desperate times anyways, don't we? The name's Victor, but you can call me Vic. Damn nice to meet you, Carl. Sorry I was less than welcoming, but you know how it is. Vic said, tucking his pistol into his pants and drawing the back of his hand across his nose before offering Carl a manly handshake. This here's my trailer, Vic said, casting his head toward an RV about 20 feet from Carl's. Well, technically, it belongs to my Uncle Kevin, but he's too damn old and doesn't truly appreciate the magnitude of the threat. Carl took a deep breath. Suddenly, he felt somewhat restored to his equilibrium. He knew Kevin. Shit. Carl had been parking his trailer in these woods for about 16 years. He was at least casually acquainted with the other campers and fishermen who frequented the site. As Carl internalized the vital information that Vic wasn't just some random lunatic or escaped convict, he said, "Holy hell, Vic. I know old Kev. Known him for years. Wait, the magnitude of... What is this threat you're referring to?" Vic went still, and his hand wandered to his waistband, where the gun was tucked away. He gave Carl a skeptical stare, and then silently assessed their surroundings. The gentle roar of the river was a backdrop for the occasional chirp of a bird. But otherwise, all was silent. Vic's eyes flickered up into the evergreens and peered into the underbrush, but nothing moved. There was no breeze, and the rain was just a mist that hung in the air, along with the scent of moss. Carl belatedly realized that Vic had been out in the woods for a while. His jawline was scruffy, and the pores on his nose were black and visible. Dirt was caked under his fingernails, and his hair was stingy and greasy. "What threat?" Vic hissed. "You playing games with me, Carl? Because you wouldn't be out here if you weren't keyed in, and I don't appreciate being toyed with." No. That's not what I meant. Listen, I'm just trying to understand your assessment of the threat, Vic. We need to share intel if we are gonna get a handle on the Shit, man. You want some beef jerky? Carl asked as he yanked a packet of Jack Links out of his pocket and tore it open. Vic accepted a hunk of jerky and gestured that Carl would follow him to his trailer. After about a dozen steps, Vic stopped in his tracks and surveilled the tree line for snipers. But soon enough, they were ensconced in the comfy confines of the almond beige wood paneling in old Kev's RV, chewing jerky and discussing strategy. Soundgarden issued softly from the tape deck as Vic chuckled and said, "Leave it to the computer nerds to completely disregard the obvious fact that we are gonna run out of digits. Goddamn educated idiots is what I call hello?" Vic could do a pretty accurate Jerry Seinfeld impression. Sweet fancy Moses. Yeah, but what'll happen? What's gonna happen when the clock strikes midnight on New Year's Eve? Carl asked, and Vic just shook his head and said, "Boom. Digital apocalypse. We run out of digits. Think about it. Our entire lives, ever since the invention of computers, we've been running on 2 digits. Wait, what?" Carl said. "There are shitloads of digits, like 8 or 9 at least." "Let me ask you this," Vic said, leaning forward. "What year did you graduate high school?" "Class of 94, Carl said. "And the year you were born?" Vic insisted, leaning closer. 75. "What's your point?" Carl said, confused. "My point? My point?" Vic said, locking Carl in his beady gaze. "My point is that when we go from 99 to 2000, boom, digital apocalypse, brah. Nobody has ever thought of the consequences. There are no guardrails in place, no safety net, Carl. Think about it." Realization dawned on Carl as he said, "Vic, how the fuck did you figure all this out? Do you work for the CIA or something?" Vic just chuckled and slowly shook his head. "Ever heard of dial-up internet jabroni? My parents have it in my dad's office in the basement. Let's just say it's not just for email and porn anymore. I've done my own research." "Fuck," Carl muttered, collapsing back into his chair. "Do you think my ATM card will stop working?" "I'm afraid it's much worse than that, amigo," Vic whispered. "It's effectively a Mayan calendar scenario. The end is upon us, and we are gonna need to be prepared." The fucking Mayan calendar?" Carl, suddenly animated, exclaimed as he threw his truck keys to Vic. "All hands on deck, Vic. You are the wheelman. I'll watch your 6. We need to get down to the 7-Eleven before dark, fuel up the rig, and load up on ammunition. 10-4. "Carl," Vic said over his shoulder, but he skittered to a stop just before they reached the truck, grabbed Carl by the front of his jacket, and said, "We are gonna need a lot more of this jerky, Carl. We need to sequester as many more packs of Jack Links as we can. Do you read me? I read you loud and clear, good buddy. Now let's get to gettin'. Clock is tickin', jabroni. Clock is a tickin', her. I remember her, the first time I laid eyes on her. She knocked at the wooden door. I knew it wasn't an adult knocking. I just know these things. The sound was light, timid, and just a bit too low on the door to belong to someone grown. I walked across my living room, the floorboards creaking under my weight, and unlocked the door. As I pulled it open, the hinges groaned softly, and there she was, standing on my porch, waiting for me. She came to me, and I knew it was her. I knew right away she was the one I'd been waiting for. I felt it. It's hard to put into words, but if I had to, it was like being struck by lightning in the pit of my stomach. A surge of electric energy coursing through me and ending in a sharp, tingling burst at the base of my skull. She was tiny, small even for her age, and her presence seemed to shrink further under the weight of the gray autumn sky. Her long blonde hair framed her round cheeks, dampened slightly by the drizzle that had been falling all afternoon. Her light blue eyes, startling in their clarity, reflected the dull brown of my front door, as if they were trying to absorb everything around her. She smiled then, just a flicker of a smile, timid, shy. It might have been imperceptible to someone else, but I saw it. I knew it was there. "Hi," she said, her voice barely louder than the wind rustling through the bare trees. I crouched to her level, studying her face as if I might find answers etched in the softness of her features. "Hello," I replied, the word catching in my throat. Her small hands clutched a green box close to her chest, a makeshift tray hanging from her neck with an assortment of colorful packages. "I'm from Troop 195 of the Girl Scouts," she said, her voice steadier now, though still carrying a gentle, unpracticed rhythm. "I'm selling cookies to finance our trip to Washington next year. Would you like to help?" I blinked, her words pulling me from the strange fog that had overtaken me since I first saw her. "I'd love to help," I said, forcing a smile. "What exactly are you selling?" She brightened, her confidence growing with every word. "I have caramel chocolate chip, Do-si-dos, lemon-ups, and thin mints." I nodded slowly, leaning one arm on the door frame. "Those all sound delicious." And they did, each one of them. I wasn't lying. I'm not a liar. I've always tried to tell the truth, to open up to anyone who showed even the slightest interest in, well, in me. It's rare enough that someone does. "Which ones would you suggest?" I asked, genuinely curious. "The Do-si-dos are the most popular," she replied, a practiced response, one she'd probably used at every house she'd visited. I tilted my head. "Are those your favorite?" Her expression softened, her small fingers playing with the corner of a box in her tray. "No, I like the Girl Scouts s'mores. But," she hesitated, her eyes meeting mine. "We're all out of those." She seemed genuinely saddened by that, and I could see it in her eyes. That's something I've always been able to do. Read people, see the emotions they hide behind words and smiles. It's a sensitivity I've had since I was a boy, and it hasn't faded with time. "How about this?" I said, my voice lowering, like I was sharing a secret. "Give me 2 boxes of do-si-dos now, and when you get more Girl Scout s'mores, I want you to come back here and bring me 10 boxes of those." Her face lit up, her smile blooming into something real and full. It wasn't timid anymore. It was happy, proud. She looked like she'd just conquered a mountain, a small victory in a world that often feels insurmountable at her age. "Really?" she asked, her voice rising with excitement. "Really?" I said, reaching into my pocket and pulling out the cash. I handed it to her. She reached for it, her movements unhurried. And as she did, I let 3 of my fingers graze the back of her small hand. It was a fleeting touch, imperceptible to her, or at least I thought it was. But I noticed how her skin quivered ever so slightly under my fingertips, like the faintest ripple in still water. She quickly pulled the money back, her attention shifting as she counted it with practiced efficiency. Then, tucking the bills into the small pouch at her side, she handed me the 2 boxes with both hands. She held them out as though they were treasures, precious and fragile, the way a child often treats even the simplest things. "Thank you so much," she said, her voice louder now, the earlier shyness melting away. "I'm happy to help," I replied, meaning it. She turned to leave, clutching her tray of cookies like a prize. At the edge of the porch, she paused and looked back at me, her eyes wide and sparkling with gratitude. "I promise I'll come back when we get more s'mores." "I'll be waiting," I said, watching as she skipped down the driveway, her small frame disappearing into the gray drizzle. I stood there for a moment, holding the boxes of cookies in my hands, feeling a strange warmth that wasn't entirely explainable. It wasn't about the cookies or the sale. It was about the way her smile had lit up the gray, how her small victory had momentarily lifted inside me. I closed the door and set the boxes on the counter. For a long time, I just stared at them, my mind replaying the exchange. Something about it had settled deeply in me, a seed waiting to grow. But her room wasn't ready. I needed to get it ready for her, to make it perfect, comfortable, a place where she could grow strong and healthy and happy. She deserved that, so I worked at it tirelessly, transforming the cold, gray basement into a beautiful sanctuary. The walls, once lifeless and bare, were painted a soft, light pink, the kind of color that whispered warmth and innocence. A bed with a quilted blanket sat in the corner, flanked by a small table with a lamp shaped like a butterfly. I built a shelf, filling it with hundreds of children's books, toys, and dolls. Every detail mattered. A camera sat discreetly in the top corner of the room, its lens fixed on the space where she would sleep and play. It wasn't about control. It was about safety. I added a lock to the heavy wooden door, one that could only be opened from the outside. It wasn't to trap her, no. It was to keep the world out, to ensure nothing could hurt her. The best part, though, was the shopping. I spent hours picking out clothes for her, envisioning her wearing them, imagining how she'd look. I chose soft fabrics in bright, cheerful colors, clothes she could wear now, and some she'd grow into over time. Each piece felt like a step closer to her, to making her mine. And then I waited. I waited for her to come back. Days turned into weeks, and still I waited. The 2 bites of cookies sat on the counter, untouched. I couldn't bring myself to open them. Instead, I would trace my fingers along their edges, touching the cardboard like I had touched her hand. Sometimes, I'd lift one to my face, inhaling the faint mix of packaging and something else, something peculiar and fleeting. The smell of her, the anticipation was unbearable. A constant hum under my skin. Each creak of the floorboards, each knock at the door, sent my heart racing, hoping it would be her. But she didn't come back, not yet. I knew she would, though. She had to. I'd made everything perfect. And then, one day, her knock came. It wasn't just any knock. It was her knock. I knew it instantly, even before my body moved to rise from the couch. I felt it in my chest, in my veins. A spark of anticipation coursing through me. The moment I'd been waiting for, the moment I'd been preparing for, was here. The chance to see her again, to look into her bright eyes, to show her what I had built for her, because of her. Because she was the one. It was her. I crossed the room in a few quick strides, unlocked the door, and pulled it open. There she stood, with that smile. It wasn't as shy as before, more certain now. Like she knew she was welcome, like she belonged here. In her hands, she held a neat stack of cookie boxes, her reason for coming back. Or so she thought. I smiled at her, a warmth creeping into my voice that I couldn't mask. "It's good to see you again," I said. She beamed, her cheeks flushed from the cool air. "I have your cookies, and since it's such a big order, I added a pack of lemon ups for free." "Well, now that's very kind of you," I replied, My tone light and friendly. I slipped my hands into my pockets, pretending to search for the cash. My fingers met empty fabric, as I knew they would. I hadn't carried any money in weeks. The truth was, I didn't want to hand her the money here on the porch. Not this time. I needed her to come inside. I looked up at her, feigning a small chuckle. "Looks like I forgot my wallet. It's inside, in the kitchen," I said, gesturing behind me. It wasn't a lie. I don't lie. I never lie. My wallet was in the kitchen, sitting right on the counter, next to the untouched cookie boxes from her first visit. The ones I had been saving for this moment. Her smile didn't falter. She nodded, clutching the boxes tighter. "Oh, that's okay," she said, ever the accommodating Girl Scout. "Why don't you come in?" I asked, stepping aside and motioning to the warmth of the house behind me. "It's cold out there, and you've been walking all afternoon, haven't you?" She hesitated for a moment, her gaze flicking to the open door, the inviting glow of the living room beyond. Then she smiled again, this time with a hint of excitement, like this was just another part of her adventure. "Okay," she said, stepping inside. I closed the door behind her, the sound of the latch clicking into place, sending a thrill through me. It wasn't loud, but to me, it echoed. I turned to her, my smile steady, my heart pounding. "Make yourself at home," I said, my voice calm and even. "Let me grab that money for you." She nodded, her eyes wandering around the room, her curiosity as innocent as ever. She was perfect. Perfect. And she was finally here. Oh, do I remember her. The way her muffled cries felt against my left hand as I pressed it over her mouth, lifting her from the ground with my right arm. She bit down, hard, and kicked wildly, her small shoes landing against my legs, but I barely felt it. I told myself it was normal. She didn't understand. Not yet. She couldn't comprehend what I had done for her, what I had built, the sacrifices I had made. Not yet. Her body thrashed against mine as I carried her, her weight so light it felt like she might vanish. But she wouldn't. Not now. Not ever. I took her down the stairs, each step an echo in the stillness of the house, and through the door. Not a room, not just any room. Her room. This was the place I had prepared for her. The place where she would grow, where she would finally be safe, where I could ensure nothing and no one could hurt her. I would see to that. Only me. I would witness every moment, every milestone. She would know, in time, how much I cared, how much I loved her. I threw her onto the bed, her small frame bouncing once before she scrambled back, pressing herself against the pink walls I had painted just for her. She screamed, her voice raw and high, tears streaming down her red face. "Please, let me go. Please," she begged, her words garbled through sobs, her tiny hands clawing at the quilted blanket I had chosen with such care. But I knew it would pass. It always passed. The crying, the yelling, the fear, it would all melt away after a few weeks. It always did. She just needed time to see. Time to realize that this wasn't what she thought it was. This was better. "It's okay," I said, my voice steady, calm, trying to cut through her cries. "You'll understand soon. I promise." Her tears only fell faster, and her words dissolved into incoherent sobbing. I watched her for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest, but not from regret or hesitation. It was from the sheer anticipation of what was to come. This was just the beginning, and like I said, I don't lie. I never lie. But they didn't understand that. They didn't understand anything. They took her away from me just 3 days after she got here. 3 days. That's all the time we had. They stormed in like animals, breaking through the front and back doors, screaming, their boots pounding on the floors. I had walked in peace for years. And the guns. Oh, the guns. Pointed at me. At me. Me, who had kept her safe. Me, who had given her a sanctuary. A place where she could be loved, cared for, where she could grow without fear. They didn't see the love in my eyes, the care in my hands, the way I had worked so hard to make her life perfect. They only saw their own distorted version of the story, their judgment cutting through my truth. They didn't understand. Oh, I remember her. I've remembered her every single day for the past 24 years, 364 days, and 6 hours. I know because I've counted. I've counted every second, every breath, every heartbeat that has passed since the moment they tore her from me. But now, just a few more days, just a little more time, and we will be reunited. Finally, I've waited for this. I've prepared for it because, like I said, I don't lie. I never lie. Heartbeat of the home. Why can't I remember? He thought. His mind would only reveal flashes of the afternoon's events. His head was on fire, sweat dripping down his face, like an addict on autopilot. Grant Liscombe burst through the front door, avoiding his mother in the kitchen. Like a spider returning to its web, his lanky teenage legs scurried up the wooden stairs of the old farmhouse to his bedroom. His arms flailed with uncontrollable fear as he yanked the dirt-covered shirt over his head, discarded it on the floor, then bounded to the bathroom, slamming the door. "What have I done? What have I done?" he muttered, lathering the perfumed soap through his fingers, frantic to wash the guilt from his newly calloused hands, watching the streaks of dirt dance and swirl down the rusty drain. His mind was confused by broken images of helping to clean the gutters, the ladder falling. Or was it pushed? The thud as Nick's body hit the ground, and the gleam of the metal shovel as Grant dug the body-sized hole. He confronted the reflection in the mirror, the gaunt, bloodshot, black-haired punk he had become. Oh God, what have you done? The reflection glared back with an evil grin. It began about a month ago, after his factory worker stepfather, Nick, lost his job. Grant's middle-aged mother, Jane, with little work experience, was initially grateful for the offer to stay at her aunt's derelict house, remotely located in the Haliburton Highlands of Ontario. Soon, she would regret it. They arrived late on an October evening, rain pelting down. The overwhelming stench of mold and decay nauseated Grant as he stepped onto the porch, past two white rattan chairs resembling broken skeleton bones. Like two cracked teeth, the front window panes whistled as Nick opened the door, and a rush of twisted oak leaves fluttered into the foyer, landing at the base of an antique grandfather clock. "Wow, look at that beauty," Grant exclaimed, smitten with the intricate carvings of the mahogany cabinet, the shiny gold filigree face, moon dial and hands, all in pristine condition, a sharp contrast to the rest of the house. "Hey, Mom, didn't Grandpa have a clock like this?" He set down his backpack, rubbed his hands over the smooth, flawless finish, inhaling the rich smell of lacquer and lemon polish, opened the case to wind the weights, then set the hands to the correct time. "Yes, he did," she answered, removing her coat and shaking the rain from her short blonde hair. "But not as old as this one. Remember what Grandpa always said? The tick of a clock is the heartbeat of the home," they repeated in unison, their heartfelt laughter filling the room with his memory. "But seriously, Grant," she said, pointing at the clock. "That thing gives me the creeps," Grant shrugged. Then, as he tapped the pendulum to start the clock, he felt a sudden chill in the air, a quiver in the continuum of space and time. The walls around him seemed to expand and contract, like the lungs of the house had taken a deep breath. "Are you all right, Grant?" His mother's face concerned. "You look pale." "He's fine," said Nick. "Quit coddling him, Jane. He isn't a child anymore." He chuckled and gently kissed her forehead. "I'll finish bringing in the rest of the stuff." Grant sensed something was terribly wrong. Something had taken control of his body. His mind shouted with fear as his consciousness slipped deeper into an abyss, and a different, cunning voice answered. "I'm okay, Mom." After the family had settled in for the night, the clock softly chimed the midnight hour, and its demon contemplated setting its evil plans in motion. Returning to his room, Grant changed into clean clothes and put on some loud, heavy metal music. He suspected his mother was having issues with his new identity. He began rifling through his closet, not sure what he was looking for. Then, at last, he found it: the metal slugger baseball bat. As he held the handle, he confirmed that Mother was next. "Grant," his mother called from the kitchen, aroma of roast beef wafting up the stairs. "Are you guys done outside? Dinner's almost ready." The stairs creaked with warning as he descended each step. Slow and deliberate, bat at the ready. A satanic song blared out of his room, the heavy bass pounding the walls. Thump, thump, thump. "Turn it down," she shouted, stirring the gravy pot, steam filling the room from the whistling kettle. But his music grew louder. He continued his mission, unhindered. From deep inside, Grant could feel the raw hatred of the demon inhabiting his body, its cruel intention, but was powerless to intervene. Suddenly, like a beacon of light through the darkness, he heard a familiar voice. "Remember the heartbeat of the home." It was Grandpa. "Grant," the voice said, "kill the heartbeat." Jane Liscombe turned off the stove and stormed out of the kitchen, down the hall, stopping at the grandfather clock at the base of the stairwell. "I said, turn it." Stopping mid-sentence, she screamed and jumped back, just as the bat came crashing down, barely missing its target. Grant gripped tighter, then swung again, this time hitting a home run as the bat smashed the glass of the grandfather clock, dislodging the pendulum and sending it flying across the room. The chimes clanged noisily in pain as he swung again and again until the battered clock showed no signs of life. Grant's grandfather's undying love had helped him overcome the demon within him and return to H.'s former self. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked, reaching out to hold her, just as Nick came limping through the front door, rubbing his head. "Nick, you're alive!" Grant shouted in surprise and relief, running to hug him. "Nick, are you all right? What happened?" Jane asked, still badly shaken. "I thought he was holding the ladder," he said angrily. "Must have fallen and knocked myself out." He looked around in disbelief at the shards of glass and pieces of wood scattered on the floor. "What the hell happened here? I'll explain in the car. We've got to leave. Now," Grant exclaimed as he helped Nick and his mother out of the house. They drove to the nearest motel, never to return. 2 years later, a young couple turned the key in the tarnished brass lock of their newly rented farmhouse in the Halliburton Hills, and as the war sunlight shone into the foyer, a spectacular sight was revealed. A beautiful mahogany grandfather clock